What's up, everybody? Welcome to Talking Ball, y'all. I am Cass Hargis. That is Jason Dewey. And joining us tonight, state champ, Coach Wayne Stein, head coach of the St. Charles Comets. Coach, appreciate you taking some time tonight. I know you're busy, always busy, but we appreciate you hopping on here with us. And congrats on another state championship with the Comets. I think that's 6 out of 7 years y'all have been in the dome or in the state championship game. Have won three, I believe. So this is kind of just I know it never gets old, but this is kind of what y'all do down there. Before we get into the game, I do want to say I got a chance to call y'all last year. I think it was Landry LeBlanc's first start against Newman last year. Um, we know how last year went for y'all. Just really like a two-part question. One, do you think this year happens without last year? And how proud of you of the growth of not just LeBlanc, but the entire football team from the experience y'all had last year to culminate to what happened this year?
Yeah, Cass, to go back even further, obviously I've been a Comet for a long time, but after taking over for Coach Monica, my first 24 months were like a Disney movie or let's say even a Hallmark movie with the storybook ending. And then um, from that point where we went forward for 4 and 4th down versus Calvary, and then, dual sport coach, dual sport kids, and then to blow a 8-run lead versus U High, and then go 4-7, and then lose our coach who passed away. For our kids to overcome all of that and to put the season that they just put together, I just finished telling my quarterback club, like, parents, it's okay for your kids to fail. They turn into better men, uh, dealing with failure. And I couldn't be prouder of not just Landry, but especially Landry, um, to go through. I don't know what the interception record is here, but he might have broke it last year. He threw 14 interceptions, and then for him to turn around and complete 75% of his passes with the schedule we played and throw 2 interceptions the entire year. Uh, and what does get lost in the game, which I know we're going to talk about it, is the 80-yard drive where he really looked like a Division I quarterback, to get us to that point where we were about to tie the game and to go in overtime, was really one of the best drives in St. Charles history.
Well, Coach, obviously talking about this football game, your team, they scored that early touchdown, really, consistently battled throughout the game. And obviously with that ending, what kind of gets lost in the discussion is, Miliota's the guy who was a 4-year starter for you. And you've talked constantly about, make your mark on the program and, put the program on the map. How big is it for this game to be that game that puts your team on the map nationally with a guy like Miliota, who is a 4-year guy who dealt with struggle and had to come back in that big moment, just moments later from one of the most heartbreaking moments you could have as a player, and then to see the resilience in him just a few snaps later.
Well, I think it's indicative of what Tyler went through is kind of what our program's all about, and it's not being one, not being afraid to fail, and then learning from failure, and uh, he was pretty much inconsolable after the kick, but uh, there was no berating or any of that. His teammates supported him. I would have hated that that's how his career would have ended because he's had a great career as a kicker. He went through some struggles last year health wise, but I always say, I like having a kid who's kicked in the Superdome before, made in the Superdome before, but missed in the Superdome before too. And uh, when he did get another shot, I know a lot of things overshadow, but for that young man to go out there after missing a potential game tying kick, thinking that he just threw away a 4-year career and to turn around and drill a career long with the state championship on the line, is really unbelievable.
And I think the next day he went and played goalkeeper for the soccer team. Is that right?
No, so he's a elite soccer player. He turned around and scored 4 goals in the first
That's
half, and
right.
they beat
Okay. Yeah,
Bell
that's right.
Chase. By the time I got to the game, he was out the game. He said, "I don't feel good." He had already scored 4 goals, and now he's got the flu. So I mean, that also is kind of indicative of what our program is. It's multi-sport guys, and why I like multi-sport guys. I don't care if it's tiddlywinks. I want my kids competing year round, right? Not at one sport, but truly competing year round. And I think that shows in moments like Friday night.
Yeah, no, and we can sit here and we can spend all night talking about that one thing, but it 100% shows up in those moments because kids that are used to competing, when it's time to compete, they go out and do it, and they go compete. But there's no doubt about that. On the coaching end, talking about this matchup specifically, you play Shaw week 10, you win 24-0. I think everyone, when they saw the matchup again, understood that this probably wasn't going to be 24-0 again. How much of your game plan and your plan in the dome changed from week 10?
Yeah, I can tell you this, like, Shaw didn't change a lot. They just played better and harder, and
Mm,
we had a couple of wrinkles, but you got to be careful because, Cass, as you know, it's tough. Do you not do it just because you already did it?
right.
And so that's what you fight with. Well, this worked, but I did it already. So do I not do it again? I mean, what if it's not
Mhm,
fixed? And I'm sure they went through the same things. And they did a nice job of making us throw the football, but they didn't do it by loading the box. They just got physical. I thought they played extremely well. I thought Coach Giglio had a great plan for our offense. And I thought our defense still played well, but it gave some lapses that it rarely gives. It gave the big touchdown run where
mhm,
two guys fit in the wrong gap, which we just don't do. Uh, we gave up, a fake punt, which we just don't do. But I said this in a press conference. I really think it was more about how well Shaw played than how poorly St. Charles Catholic played. But what I was concerned about, and I did see, uh, we had to exert a lot of emotion to get that, and Shaw did not. Their
mhm.
road was not an emotional road. They didn't play a
Yeah.
nail biter. We had to go through the likes of Edie White, although the score looks like it's a blowout, it was not. And then a
Mhm.
U High. And I just didn't know how much we would have left in the tank uh, going into Shaw emotion wise. And I did feel that. Now, I did feel like once we got life at the end, our kids really executed at a high level.
Yeah. That's like the double-edged sword of you play a bunch of tight, close games, so you get in a tight, close game and you're used to it, but you got to expend a whole lot of energy to get there. That's a good point.
Well, Coach, you had to deal with that the last time you made it to the Dome. You played U High in that tight game, and then you were playing a Calvary Baptist team. So, how much did that kind of play into your mindset and your approach, talking to your team, dealing with the team throughout the week leading up to that moment? Because, again, having just had that experience and been on the other end of it, how much did that impact the way that you approached the week with your football team?
Yeah, it's exactly what I spoke about. And I try to not, you don't want to overspeak about it because sometimes I think you can speak that into existence, but that was a major concern. Uh, you know, Media outlets and whatnot are talking about, you beat Shaw 24-0. They had 11 yards. And we were aware how it was still a physical football. We were aware of how good Shaw is and how well coached they are. And I think we caught them in week 10, kind of licking their wounds from that Bell Chase game, they got into the playoffs, and Coach Tierney got them rolling. They went live during the open week, and they got physical again, and they totally dominated their playoff opponents. And I think they came into the dome with a different swagger, when it comes to that. And so I thought our kids matched that intensity, but we're used to overwhelming people with our effort, and I think that our efforts were even. Um, and I felt good about getting it into overtime and us being on the right side of it. I never thought about going for two. I've had that question come up. Thought about
Mhm.
getting it into the overtime, and then obviously afterwards, all the chaos kind of ensued. But just try to warn our kids. We have been there before, uh, you know, with that whole Calvary situation and 6 inches away from three-peating. And Something Coach Monica always said that resonated. There's no guarantee you're gonna play well in big games. We've went through the film critically already, and some of our best players did not play well. And they don't know why, and we don't know why either. And it's just it happens in those big games at times.
How much, speaking on that big game, and how much does being there, both as players, but really kind of more importantly as a staff and as a program, prepare you not just for the week leading into the dome, but for an end game situation like y'all had? Regardless of what happened, the end of the game was crazy. So how much does having that experience, maybe not in that particular situation, but being in high pressure situations, it prepare you for the highest of pressure situations?
I definitely think it does, Cash, just from a simple fact of we've been there and got it done and found a way to beat Dunham, and then we've been there and gave it away.
Mhm.
And we felt both emotions, coaches and players, and I think we were just able to handle our emotions, and uh, keep coaching to the final whistle. And I think our kids did the same thing, and uh, that's why whenever they were given life by what happened, I thought our kids really did a nice job of not getting too excited and just cashing in. It was business as usual.
Mm.
Coach, so I mean, obviously you played at St. Charles Catholic. You coached under Coach Monica. Your first year as defensive coordinator, you guys make the state title game. Um, but looking back at the journey you've had at your time at St. Charles years ago when you started playing, could you have ever imagined the program being where it is today? The amount of success that you were able to have with your teams over the years alongside Coach Monica, and now leading the program yourself as both the baseball and football coach.
Yeah, I don't know that I could say I did, Jason. There's some things that Coach Monica talked about that always resonated with me. And you're right. I'm blessed. This is my 22nd year at St. Charles, and I've coached in uh, 10 football state championships. Four as an assistant, and then in baseball, same thing. I'm going into year 23, and I've had a chance to compete in over 10 state championships. So to think uh, that was going to happen probably when I started being somebody that went to St. Charles Catholic, I think Coach Monica always talked about the 4 minute mile. Once upon a time, it was unattainable. They said if you a mile in 4 minutes, your heart would explode and you would die, right? And then somebody did, and then that got broken 10 times in the next calendar year. And I think the same thing happened at St. Charles Catholic, right? Winning a state championship once upon a time was just kind of a fantasy. And once it happened, and it was an attainable goal. It became a goal, and I think over time that expectation is just and so sometimes it can be scary to have expectations that we have for ourselves in our sports. But I think I'm proud of the fact that our staff and our kids they don't run away from those expectations. They some and they know that they have a bullseye on them, and they have to be prepared and better than anybody.
Well, Coach, the 4 minute mile is funny. I was actually talking with my team about that a couple of weeks ago. It's such a true story too. It's like once you do something one time, the impossible no longer seems, and it almost becomes the expectation. And that is 100% the expectation for what you have rolling down there in St. Charles. And I'll say this as someone who's been lucky enough to compete against y'all, the respect that you have for your programs around the state, not just because y'all win, but the way you do it, the way your kids compete. They definitely take the personality of their coach, and that is a positive for your guys. Makes it harder on us competing against y'all, but definitely fun to watch, and it's always good to see good guys do well. But man, we appreciate you hopping on here with us. Congrats again. I know you took some time after your quarterback club meeting tonight to do that. So take a breath the next few days, and then we'll be strapping it on a baseball field January 5th, huh? January 6th. Y'all hopping right back on.
Yeah, we started our 21-day throwing program Monday, and
That's right.
we're gonna try to be kind of player driven till January 5th. And once January 5th gets there, we rip it in.
There you go. We appreciate it, Coach.
Thanks, Coach. Appreciate your time.
He's the best.
Man, and like I said, I don't want to say it on air just because, like, I don't know how people react. Again, Coach Monica doesn't always react great to that kind of stuff, but he won 2 state titles in 2 sports in back-to-back years. I don't know anybody as a head coach who's done that. And that's just, an unbelievable accomplishment to win one in one sport, much less to win back-to-back in 2 major sports in football and in baseball, and to be a consistent player in that. So, I mean, Cass, I guess that's where we'll start, right? Just kind of looking at some of these championship games. I mean,
Hey, before we go on, our guy, look at him.
Yeah.
Look at him. He's watching and listening. Look at him. He just finished a set of bench press. He's over here congratulating Coach. We miss you, Lance. Yeah, dude. Let's just jump into. So you're with us. If you're on here watching, we're gonna do something that you probably shouldn't do and assume that some of the particulars that happen in Superdome. So we're not going to dig into every game. We will, however, talk about each day, the event in it of itself, and then look back at the season. I do want to say this, Jason. One of the best parts about this past weekend, and I know you were able to go to the Dome. Did you go Saturday too, or just Friday?
I only got to go Friday, but I think I picked the best day to go.
Yeah, there's no doubt. We'll talk about that. But full transparency, Jason knows this, but I was moving houses, so I was not able to go to any. I did, however, watch all the games, whether it was live or on replay. But one of the coolest things about the weekend was seeing the coverage of the games, and not just from the big media companies or local media, but I'm going to shout some people out, and I'm sure that means I'm going to forget somebody and somebody's going to be mad. But people like Marshall Leffler with Red River Roundup, Mike McMillan at North Shore Prep Report, the guys from Under the Lights, like they were doing a tremendous job of covering and showcasing the weekend that was in Louisiana high school football in the Superdome. It's always a great event. It's done really well by the LHSAA. They did another tremendous job this week. The one thing I texted this y'all, I think on Saturday only having 2 games to me of people of a certain age is kind of weird. And I know Lance was always there with me, but we grew up going to the Saturday triple header, usually showing up at like halftime of the 1A game and staying through the 5A game. So 2 games on Saturday is a little bit different, but that is such a huge undertaking. Those guys did a great job. It was fun to follow from afar.
Oh yeah, I mean, and I didn't get to see every snap of every game, but I was locked in. I was watching a large portion of it, but man, it's such a great event. Even just getting to go spectate as a fan, and as you mentioned, all the people covering. I want to shout out Jace Lejeune as well of Gridiron Football, who I want to shout his game a little bit later as well that they put on. But I think the amount of coverage that it gets is warranted. It doesn't feel exclusive, right? Like it doesn't feel exclusive that only a few people get to appreciate the sport or cover the sport. There's different flavors for everybody. It's like going to Baskin Robbins. It's like there's flavors for everybody, and we hope that we're your flavor. But we do, we appreciate everybody for being here watching with us. Again, like this is not our regular day. We usually go Sunday. So again, if you're watching, again, we know you already know the recap. Like you're watching purely to again look at these games with us. So we appreciate you guys taking the time to watch, and of course seeing Wayne Stein's interview with us again. Coach winning another state title for St. Charles, huge accomplishment for him in that program.
Yeah, no doubt about that. Well, talking about the weekend, we had a little bit of everything. 8 games. We had a team that scored 43 points and lost. We had a team score 21 points and win. We had a team throw for exactly 0 yards and win. So it was a little bit of everything. All of the games, the average score, I think I did this earlier, it was like 35.4 to 24.3. So roughly a 10-point spread. And if you throw out the car game, which they can be separated now from any conversation when talking about everybody else, and we'll get to them here in a second. if you take out the car game, the average margin of victory was 7 points. So it's exactly what you want to see out of a prep classic. We'll go back to Thursday, and one game I want to touch on a little bit. This game actually ended up as a 10-point victory. If you watch the game, it was really a 7-point game. Riverside beats Ascension Catholic 31-21. They were the middle game on Thursday. They kick a field goal at the end of the game, 40-yard field goal, I believe. The River Parish is in field goals, Jason. Y'all got some kickers down there. They kick a field goal to go up by 10, but huge win, obviously, for Coach Lee Roussel and the Riverside Rebels to get Riverside, I believe, their second state championship. They've been in a dome 3 out of 5 years. Does that sound?
That sounds about right, but I do
right.
want to, and I want to clarify on that too. So they've only won twice as part of the LHSAA. So they
Correct.
have won. They've won some titles as an independent. I know Coach Frank Monaco won one there as well. So, but they've, to my knowledge, they've been, I want to say 4 or 5 times. I know they lost to Southern Lab recently,
2 years ago,
but they beat St. Charles in 2016. So that was a big River Parish game there. But you know what's impressive about this one, Cass, is that Obique goes down early on in this football game. We're not out, but he was injured. They still find a way. Brock Bourgeois, the veteran quarterback, steps up and makes some clutch passes. Again, 142 yards, 2 touchdowns, 7 for 12. But a big pitch and catch to Obique early on, and that kind of it looked like he hurt his calf a bit, or he was a bit sprained. But Boogie goes for 89 yards and a touchdown. Like, it was just a really fun game to watch. And defensively, they gave up a touchdown early, but continued to battle in that football game against a back in Simon that, again, state rushing champion. So, I mean, a really fun football game to watch.
It really was. And, we talked about coming into it that we thought the rushing record may have a chance to be broken. Obviously, that didn't happen. Beakway does go down. I think the Riverside really showed how multiple, and this was something we touched on going into the game, they can be on offense. They had 4 different players throw a pass. And, so you might look at that and say, well, that means that you don't have one guy that can throw a pass. But they had to get creative, and they did. They hit a big pass play on a throwback to a post right before or right after halftime that set up a touchdown. Like, they were finding big plays, without Obique being 100%. And they had a great year, and they played a really good football game. Ascension Catholic, again, state's all-time leading or state's single-season rushing leader. Simon, they come in. They were almost kind of like a one-trick pony. Like, their path to victory was for Simon to go off. Riverside did a good job of corralling him and didn't let it happen. And then Riverside figures out a way to win 31-21.
Yeah, and that's why I said that they had a shot at it being broken, because of the nature of their offense and the way that they operate. And they scored early on a big run, but credit to Riverside and their defense. They've been solid all year long, and they stepped up in big moments to win that football game. Really a fun one to watch.
No doubt. And the nightcap was Dunham. Dunham beats Calvary Baptist 34-17. Dunham was in the dome last year, lost to Catholic New Iberia. Elijah Haven throws for 271 yards and 3 touchdowns. He did throw an interception. He was also Dunham's leading rusher. He had 27 rushing attempts with 136 yards and 2 touchdowns. Kind of just another pedestrian stat line for Elijah Haven. That's like a career for some guys. But look, this isn't breaking news. He might be the best quarterback in the class 2027 in the country. And he played like it. And it was good to see when you get to that stage, the best players play their best. And he did just that. He played well last year as well. But to see him play well and that team win, Calvary came in. They had maybe one of the more impressive semifinal victories over Notre Dame, just not enough over Dunham.
And he looks so natural doing it. He doesn't look like he feels the pressure. He's so composed.
Nope.
No, and he can run, but again, he's mobile. He's not a running quarterback, right? And you might think I'm crazy when you look at the stat line. I mean, he still ran for 136 yards and passed for 271, but he's not a rushing quarterback. He's definitely looking to pass the football. And credit to this offense, they have so many guys on the team. It's not just the Elijah Haven show, and it might look like it if you haven't paid attention to the team, but Heyman, Washington, there's so many guys that they were able to get the football to, but the physicality, I think, of that defensive front for this Dunham team really got the job done as well. Cass, they only gave up 13 rushing yards.
Yeah.
I mean, this is a really good football team, and we knew if they were able to go on the road and beat LCA in that environment, it kind of felt like theirs to lose. And really, they played excellent in that football game.
No, they did. Yes, you're correct. I'm glad you mentioned their defense because, and rightfully so, that offense with Elijah Haven gets most of not the credit, but the publicity, as they deservedly so. But that defense, no doubt, was just as big of a reason that they won that game.
Elliot Trahan, I want to shout him out. Elliot Trahan, man, and I watched him in the quarterfinal game. Just sideline to sideline kind of guy. Again, a smaller end, kind of defensive tackle, but him and I know Heyman in that quarterfinal game as well, all over the field. Again, for a smaller group, man, super physical on both fronts. And I think if you're a coach, not more you can ask for than to be called physical when you're playing games like that.
No doubt. That's one thing that you want to be, if nothing else, right? You want to do that, and they were exactly that. On Friday, we had 3 games. You had Iowa defeat North DeSoto 50-43. Sterlington defeated Gina 34-20, and then St. Charles in the nightcap won 23-21. Touch on that first game, Iowa North DeSoto game. But I think we thought this game would be high scoring, and I think we all thought that favored North DeSoto in doing so. Iowa, such an impressive season, such an impressive ball game. But the 2-year run that this team has had has really been impressive. Caston Lewis, he only ran the ball 15 times. He ran for 172 yards and 2 touchdowns. Jevion Adams had 24 carries for 158 yards and a touchdown. Luke Delafield for North DeSoto threw for 230. They did not have, speaking of North DeSoto, they did not have a rusher go over 100 yards. And I think that in the semifinals, they found the running game. In the finals, they probably needed a little bit more of it. This Iowa defense is really good. I know they gave up 43 points, but I'll be honest. If you told me the score was 50-43, my response would have been North DeSoto won the game. I just didn't think Iowa could do it. Boy, did they ever. They win their first state championship in program history.
Yeah, and what's incredible is it's their first one, and it felt like against a juggernaut, a team that had been there before, even though they haven't won a title before. It felt like they were the front runner for a large portion of the season. Again, we don't pick, but if I were to have picked, I would have had to pick North DeSoto purely for no other reason than that had been my horse going into the season. But I remember talking to you guys before, and I said, look, Iowa's hot. Like, I don't think you can underestimate when a team is playing extremely hot, and I think that's going to lead into another game we're going to talk about later. But just a really impressive effort by the Yellow Jackets. Of course, the way the game ended on that penalty, you don't love to see that. It was the right call.
It was,
but it's really unfortunate that the game had to come down to that. I would have loved to see how it played out. However, it's part of the game, and it's the rules are rules for a reason. And if it would have been in the first quarter, they would have called it. And if it was in the fourth quarter, they should have called it. So it's just unfortunate the way it unfolded. But, man, 2 really good football teams going at it. And if you like high-scoring football games, man, it was definitely a sight to see.
Yeah, and just to go back to what Jason's talking about, if you hadn't seen or don't know, Iowa, I forget the time on the clock, but Iowa
was around 2:30.
About 2:30 left. Iowa was punting up 7. North DeSoto set to get the ball back, and they roughed the punter, and it led to essentially them being able to run out the clock.
Yeah. And real quick, before we do go on, we do want to mention as well, Haynesville beat Mangum 39-37. Again, multiple defensive touchdowns by Haynesville in that one, man. That's kind of what they've done all year. But that was another explosive football game. What's unfortunate that you mentioned, like no passing yards for Haynesville, but 484 rushing yards for Mangum. Unbelievable effort. Willie Randolph, 203. Kenneth Mitchell, 137. Colby Casey, 133. And then, Ethan Henderson, Isaiah Washington, 2 touchdowns apiece on offense. And then defensively, both of those guys scored a touchdown as well. So I think that's what made Haynesville so dangerous is their defense's ability to score points. And unfortunately for Mangum, it kind of came up in that football game.
Yeah, Haynesville, you kind of know what you're going to get out of those guys, and that's exactly what they did. And they did it really well. That middle game on Friday, Sterlington defeated Gina 34-20. Speaking of Haynesville not having passing yards, Sterlington completed 1 pass for 22 yards. They go on to win 34-20. This was Gina's first time making it to the Superdome. Sterlington is a regular in the Superdome. They win back-to-back state championships. TJ Birch led Sterlington in rushing with 105 yards, 2 touchdowns. Daniel Hatcher for Gina, a young man who's had a tremendous season. He finished the day with 110 yards. Cedric Wilson had 90 yards. Gina, just explosive off. They've been explosive all year long. Sterlington was just too much for them. Sterlington was so impressive all year long against that schedule. I think the only loss was Neville in week 3 or 4, and it was a 7-point game. There's a really good program. Coach Lee Doty, I believe this is the second program that he has led to a state championship. I know he's been to the Dome with both St. Mary's and Sterlington. So wherever he goes, he wins, but Sterlington, again, wins back-to-back state championships.
I think this is – I don't think this is the last time you'll see Gina, the Giants, either. This feels like it's taken a while for them to finally get here, and they weren't able to win it. And I was in the crowd at the end of that game. I definitely felt for the fans, for the football team. But Sterlington's has been a program and a staple for quite some time, and it's hard to beat a team like that, regardless how many times you've been there, regardless if you've seen a team of that caliber in that moment. We talked about it, even sometimes pregame preparations. Where are the lights? How are the shadows when you're playing in that game? The little things can kind of come into effect and matter in those situations. And the Panthers have been around quite some time. And again, just won a title there last year. I think those kinds of things can make the difference in this football game. Plus, Sterlington has been a second half team. Last week, they're in a tight football game against St. James, and they came out and kicked the doors open in the second half. And Sterlington trailed going into halftime of this football game, and they come out with a 15-point third quarter and kind of finish off the job. Made some big plays at the end to kind of stretch that score, but it really was a tight football game. And, I don't think this will be the last you see of the Giants either.
Yeah, no, I don't think so. Either that Gina program and that community, man, they were excited. They were fired up to be there. Just Sterlington's just too much. Sterlington is just too much. The last 3 games, and I'll let you, Jason, here in a second, get into as deep as you want, because I know you were there for the St. Charles Shaw game. But St. Charles defeats Shaw 23-21 to cap Friday night, and then on Saturday, Ouachita, maybe the 2 best games of the weekend were back-to-back on 2 different days. Ouachita defeats Ruston 21-20 to start Saturday, and to end the Prep Classic, Edna Carr defeats St. Aug 49-14. Jason, you want to start? I know we had Coach Stein on earlier. Start with that St. Charles Shaw game. I know, again, if you're watching this show, I'm going to wrongfully maybe assume that you know how it ended. I'm sure you've seen it. If you have a Twitter account, you've seen it.
It's tough. It's tough to imagine you can't accidentally have seen this. It's been on Twitter, TikTok, everywhere, on every outlet. So obviously St. Charles won the game 23-21. But so here's the thing: when you look at the football game, and again, to Coach Stein's point, it felt like Shaw was out hitting St. Charles for a good point of the game. They came out very physical, and it didn't seem like they were doing anything exotic. They did fake a punt, and that turned into points that, I do think that made a little bit of a difference. But when you look at the tail end of this game, so again, I'm going to go ahead and recap the chain of events for you guys, again, at home, just because of my my at the game experience. So I'm there with my entire family, including my newborn, my young son, my parents. We're all there and we're sitting. And because of that nature of that, we're fixing to leave the game after they missed the PAT and St. Charles kicks the onside kick. So they get the ball and Shaw goes on the field and they kneel the football. Well, we're already headed out to the concourse at this moment. Well, I see something out the corner of my eye and I see a helmet is thrown. And I said, everybody calm down for a second. Like, let's slow our walk. And, I'm seeing the call. I hear it and I hear 15-yard penalty. I said, okay, let's keep going. And I hear the official come out and announce St. Charles will be given back a touchdown. At that moment, I stopped. And I promise, look, I have eyewitnesses. I have no reason to make this up. I stopped my feet. I turn to my people and say, we're going to go finish this football game because St. Charles is about to win this game. They said, what do you mean? I said, you don't understand what just happened. They got a timeout back. So I said, they can call 2 timeouts now. They can force a punt. They can block it. And St. Charles can go kick the game-winning field goal. There's literally people headed to the exit and like 15 or 20. I'm like, yo, you better go back. This game's not over. And sure enough, exactly what I said, the chain of events happened. They called the timeouts. The punt's off. And of course, what an incredible kick. A 44 yards from the hash cast. Like, I don't think that can be overstated as well. Like, it was a high snap. They had to get the ball down. Plus, it was from the hash. And that kind of goes overlooked with Milioto's kick. But just an unbelievable effort and just one of the craziest endings to a football game that you'll ever see or be a part of. It's unfortunate somebody had to lose that game and the nature of that. I feel for everybody involved on the other side of that because, again, it's a tough way to lose a football game. But Cass, it wasn't one thing. And I think that's important to note as well. It was a ton of events, decisions, plays that occurred that led to that ending. And, hats off to Milioto in that moment, though, who, again, missed the game-tying PAT and goes on to kick the game-winning field goal. Just the range of emotions he had to feel in that amount of time, plus about a 2.5-minute delay checking on a timeout call for delay of game, which was longer than the timeout would have been. That's a different discussion for another day. But it's unbelievable for him to keep that mindset for that amount of time.
Yeah, it was crazy. It was chaos, I guess maybe would be the best way to describe the last 36 seconds of the game.
36 seconds on the clock, but it was like
36
7 minutes.
36 seconds that lasted 30 minutes.
Sounds about right.
It was a tremendous ending. It really was a tremendous football game. When Shaw breaks an 80-yard touchdown run in the third quarter, it almost feels like, okay, that's the nail in the coffin, if there is a coffin. St. Charles drives again and throws a pick, and then you're thinking, okay, this is probably how this is going to end. But and both of these programs are championship programs, so I'm going to mention St. Charles being a championship program that found a way to win. Shaw is as well, but championship programs like St. Charles find a way to win games like that. And sometimes you can't explain exactly why or how things happen. They just do, and they went ahead and won. But it was crazy ending, really good football game. Speaking of go ahead.
No, I was going to say, and for LeBlanc as well to come back after that. Look, it was an incredible interception.
No, it was a great play.
Like it was an incredible freak football play that was made on the other end by Christian Langford to come up with that interception. But, for LeBlanc to put that next drive together, and St. Charles isn't a team that passes a ton or has passed a ton throughout the year, but they're mounting that drive to try and tie it up, which unfortunately, didn't turn out that way. But to even put that drive together was a really impressive feat.
No, it was. It was a really good game by two well-coached teams and two really good programs. That was Shaw St. Charles was a district rematch from Week 10. This was which started a string of 3 straight district rematches to end the Prep Classic. In Game 1 on Saturday, in a rematch from Week 6 or Week 5, in which Ruston won Washita Paris defeats Ruston 21-20 to win their first state championship since 1989. For Ruston, this senior class knows nothing but playing the final week of the regular season. The last 2 years they have come up short. They lost to Central last year. They lose to Washita Paris this year. Montreal Connor throws for 184. He also rushes for 55. Macario Dade, 21 rushes, 147 yards, 2 touchdowns. Look, this was a physical football game, which is what we expected. Came down to a field goal. Ruston misses a field goal, 52-yard field goal at the end of the game. Going into the game, we talked about Ruston being without Dalen Powell and how Sam Hartwell was going to have to step up and kind of carry the load, shoulder the load for that running game. He rushed for 71 yards. He was Ruston's leading rusher. He ran for a touchdown. He also threw for 184 and a touchdown. Right before the half, Washita went on a drive. They were down 17-7. Ruston gets the ball to start the second half. Washita goes on a drive, picks up converts a few fourth downs to get into field goal range, and they miss a field goal to go. It could have been 17-10. Instead, it's 17-7. And it almost felt like that was kind of not it, but like it was very deflating. It was very deflating for that team. But man, credit to them because they persevered. They come out in the second half. They score 14 points. They outscore Ruston 14-3 in the second half, and they win. Their first state title since 1989. We go back to that Week 5 game with Ruston. Or Week 6, whatever week it was. Washita was undefeated coming in. They lose to Ruston, and they lose 4 straight to finish the season as a 14 seed. They win at home over St. Amant in the 3-point game in the first round, and they travel every week from there on out to go and win a state championship. One of the most impressive runs through the playoffs I think that we've seen. I saw earlier on Twitter that only Acadiana in 2015 or 16, when they had to forfeit 3 games and dropped to like the 27 seed, only Acadiana played higher seeds on their way to the Dome and the state championship. So tremendous run for Washita. Heartbreaker for Ruston. But man, look, that program, one of the best in the state, one of the best in the region. They'll be back. Good to see someone like Washita win a state championship for the first time in a while.
Yeah, and this is a team that we knew coming into the playoffs that could be dangerous, but we also looked at their path. And realistically, objectively, you knew it was going to be a brutal road. Even in their first game, they had to play a Santa Maria team, Cooper Babb and a guy who signed to go play at Nichols as their quarterback. It wasn't an easy win. Then they have to go play Destrehan. They get that win. And you start to go, oh, this is a team that's for real. And it just continue to have that snowball effect to go win on the road at Neville. Just a really impressive path to victory. By the time they got to the Superdome, again, if you were making this pick at the beginning of the year and you were told Ruston or Washita going in, if you told these teams are going to be playing in the playoffs and in the state title, you'd have picked Ruston. Like, I just call a spade, but the momentum that Washita had and the way they were able to ride it, especially going into that second half, just unbelievable to see Coach Benji Lewis and his staff put this run together after going 500 in the regular season. And this is a team, and I believe it's 500 or 1 game above it. But this is a Washita team that we knew every game in their district they were in. There wasn't a game where it felt like it got out of hand. They were involved in every game, and you knew it. They had to kind of overcome their demons. They had to overcome what happened in the regular season, but they had the potential. And they dug down deep, and they found a way to get it done with playing physical football. Their defense was outstanding in the playoffs to be this physical. And again, this is Ruston without Dalen Powell, but still, there's a rushing attack that was still potent against Zachary a week ago. So for them to get the job done the way they were able to do it, and to your point, on the road so many weeks in a row, and to beat a team that's been living in the Superdome, this unbelievable for this Washita Lions program and a huge win for them.
It's almost like you look at a team like that and they wouldn't want it any other way. They have the 4-game losing streak. You get the 14 seed. You look at their path. You said they had to slay their demons. They did. The last 2 weeks. They had to defeat 2 district foes who defeated them in the regular season. One on the road at Neville, which is, just across town, and then one in the Superdome in Ruston. So tremendous
which is not
playoff run, tremendous season. Like it's
you heard the vuvuzelas during the Neville game. That's a little bit of a distraction to go out there and play that football game.
But you're not a fan of those.
But no, I'm not. But I think the environment's great. Look, if I'm not there, listen. If I put it on mute, it's great. But I can't because the comment, like I said, their broadcast is so good. I gotta listen. But like, I can do it without the vuvuzelas. But Cass, it comes into question: would they have even been in this position had they won any of those games?
No, I agree. You look at it now, and it's easy to say, no, I don't think they would have. We don't know.
Yeah.
But what they went through between weeks 6 through 9 definitely, hardened them and, made them who they ended up being in week 15, which is the best team in Division I non-select in the state of Louisiana. That's pretty impressive stuff there for that program. Last game of the weekend was one that everyone pointed to as both on the field being exciting and what could happen in the stands. I think there was 34,500 people. That was the official attendance for this game. The environment looked great on TV. The other thing I think it did, going back to that Ruston-Washita game, it made the end of their game even more exciting as those people started to file in for the St. Aug Carr game. St. Aug beats Carr in another district rematch 49-14. Carr is obviously, without question, now that they won the state championship, the best team in the state of Louisiana. And I think that you can make a very easy argument that they're a top 5 team in the country. And you could also probably argue that they might just be the best team in the country. You could definitely put that up for argument. They're so impressive. And we'll get into some of the numbers here. But look, this game was 49-14. St. Aug never really felt like they could win or they were in it. But this was a 2-possession game in the third quarter. And then Carr just puts the foot on the gas and runs away and hides. Trey Garrison for Carr, 41 rushing attempts, 183 yards. John Johnson, quarterback, he scores 4 touchdowns rushing, throws for 169 yards, only throws 3 incompletions. And when you look at the stats and the numbers, you see what makes Carr so good. None of these numbers jump out the page individually. But then you look up and you say that they just beat a St. Aug team who's extremely talented, 49-14. They do it collectively. There's talent everywhere. I don't know. I don't know that I properly have the words to describe this team. They've won 27 straight games, back-to-back state champs. Super impressive what Coach Bryce Brown's done.
Yeah, and this is a team in their I think Lance sent it to us, Cass, in their pregame video. It said, they're going to start the Superdome's going to start having to charge us rent. I love that line. Yeah. But, Cass, it goes back to I spoke to a coach when I called the Holy Cross game and just having, just a casual conversation before the game. And, I mentioned that they had played American Heritage in the Dome the week before. How was that experience? Was it awesome? And I want to be very clear. This was not arrogance or cockiness. It was just matter of fact. He looked at me and said, man, we're in the Dome so much. It really didn't rattle us. And it was like, it's true. I mean, it's where they consistently are at the end of the season. This isn't a massive moment for them. And when you're playing a team that's that calm, cool, and collected in that moment, so hyped before the game. Again, you saw the run-up video. The guy who was doing slam dunks with his line.
That's great.
I mean, but this is a team that's felt, collectively like the best group of high school athletes I've ever seen assembled on the field at one time. Other people in the state might not agree with that sentiment, but it's the best team I've ever covered and gotten to see in person. And I do want to say, going into the game, we were talking about past the victory. And I mentioned, I thought that Trey Garrison and this rushing attack would be Edna Carr's path, and just leaning on their defense. And coming up with that strip sack fumble. And again, if you want to argue it was a fumble or not, that's a different discussion.
It was a fumble.
I thought so too. But the way that this defense was able to, as a unit, just be, there's no weakness. And I know I've said it over and over, and it becomes such a cliche, but Cass, on the defensive line, you had the best defensive tackle in the country, I would argue, in Richard Anderson. You had a bunch of other guys surrounding him that are still 6'5", 250. Romeo Brown at linebacker. You got Mo Williams in the secondary, along with, again, just a really talented group of defensive backs. Like, I was just so impressed with this team from the start of the season, and just seeing them over the course of the year, just the way that they're able to swarm to the football. They're really difficult to pass on, and find me a way to beat that football team. Like, find me a path on offense. It's very difficult. Again, everybody, the entire 15 Division I signees, again, to clarify, that's only the kids that signed this year. It's not including the guys who are on the team that are juniors or below who are going to eventually sign. So it's just an unbelievable group of players and athletes. And again, Coach Brown and his staff did an incredible job preparing his young men week in and week out. And even in that, you mentioned, Cass, their last loss was in that difficult weather, raining weather, and they won that game last week. So when you're talking about on turf in what feels like their natural environment, like nothing to slow them down with their speed and their athleticism, it feels like you have to be a contrast in style to beat Edna Carr. Yeah. Like you can't try to play the same type of football game. And it's going to be very difficult to beat them at their own game.
No, I was going to tell you, when you talk about a path to beat them, I think hope it's freezing cold, raining, windy, and somehow they play their D game and you play an A+ game. I mean, that. What was impressive, though, talking about that pass rush, this was impressive on the St. Aug side, especially early on. They did a good enough job of handling the pressure. Like, Carr had to start to blitz to create some pressure, and then you start seeing ghost and up front, and it gets a little bit out of hand. But Vashawn Coulon, like, he had time to take a drop, set his feet, make a throw. The problem is when you do that, you're throwing into what's essentially a Division I secondary, and it's relentless. It doesn't stop. They don't let you breathe. They make you think you're in the ball game, and then all of a sudden there's a fumble, and you look at the scoreboard and you're down 28 points. It's impressive. The talent.
And again, this is the thing. This is the St. Aug team by every metric that could be ranked nationally, I might add.
Right.
Like, this is a really good football team. This is a really incredible football team. And you mentioned Coulon. We talked about Whitley the entire year, and Derek Bennett, who's been really impressive, and Khalil Lewis, and again, this defensive line, this defensive unit's been all over the field. Chad Jones Jr. gets an interception for 6 points, and again, they have guys themselves, and for them to win the football game that they did, 21 points in the second quarter, it just felt indicative of the season that Carr has had the entire year.
Yeah, they had 2 quarters. The second and fourth quarter, they scored 21 points in both. It's just extreme. I mean, I don't know what to say other than just impressed. It's just extremely impressive. Can't wait to watch them play again. I think,
sure.
I know that they're graduating a lot. I think the thing I'm most intrigued in watching next year is not just if they're going to reload, but almost how much better can they be? Because they're just going to continue to get better and play at the level and the standard that they have set for themselves these past few years. But so impressive, fun to watch. What an environment that they played in that dome. Those 2 fan bases and communities deserve a ton of credit for what they presented for those young men to play in front of. It was a great way to end the Prep Classic. Obviously, you just wish the game might have been a little bit closer, but can't control that. However, you can control everything else, and it was a great weekend, tremendous weekend for the state of Louisiana to showcase the best of high school football. We do it. I don't know if you're going to say we could do it better, because I think are some states that do it really well, but we do it just as good as anybody. They do it just as good as anybody, and to have the culmination of the season end in an iconic arena like the Superdome is really cool for all parties involved. And great job by the LHSAA. The mute button's kicking your tail right now, Jason.
Yep. We talked a lot about the way the playoffs have been structured and how improved the playoffs have been over the past few years, and I think the culmination of games that we got to watch in the Superdome this year proved just every game felt like. And again, of course, not all the outcomes came down that way, but there was excitement around every single game. There didn't feel like when there were not. I'm just going to be very honest. When there were 9 state titles. It didn't feel that way.
You could point to a few games during the Prep Classic and say, this one's not going to be close.
I watched it. Again, I'm not trying to throw anybody under the bus, but I'll say when there's a state championship game and a team kicks a ball off for negative yards, there might be too many championship games. And that's what was happening at one point in time. I've never seen anything like it. Well, I'm not going to say the game. I'm not going to do that to anybody. But it was tough to watch. But the point is, you're cheapening the product, and we have such a strong brand of football here, and it's because we have the most amount of NFL players per capita. Because just the guys down here care, and and what I love is, there's been a lot of. I'll be very open and honest about it. There's been a large portion of my life where I did have that little bit of South Louisiana football is just a little bit different, but. Over the past few years, and again, even coming into the season, Cass, the amount of research we did coming into the season, I was like, man, I don't know what I was thinking this entire time. Like, North Louisiana has a ton of talent, and what's ironic is the select bracket was kind of owned by the Southern teams, and the non-select bracket was owned by the Northern teams, and it was just, man, the brand of football all over the state, whether north, south, east, west, Lafayette, Baton Rouge, New Orleans, Monroe, Shreveport. Cenla, everywhere. There's good football to be found everywhere in the state. And what I do love is getting to reach out, meet, in case, doing this. We got to meet a lot of people this year. We appreciate all those people who reached out to us, who we got to work with. Mike, Marshall, again, some of the other people that we've gotten to the people at Hayden, the people at Under the Lights, who we're going to probably get with a little bit more in the future, because, again, they were kind enough to give us a few shout outs, and they do a great job as well. But again, getting to be part of the circle, it feels like, right? It feels like there's a lot of people who have been doing it for a while, and there's been a large push over the past year, over the course of this season. And for us to kind of be in that group and get to build these relationships has been just a ton of fun. And we appreciate everybody for watching, for listening, for reaching out to us, and for kind of including us in that circle. Like, it doesn't feel, it feels like the coverage has really grown significantly this year, for whatever reason. And we're just really thrilled to be a part of it. And I'm thrilled to be a part of this show. Again, Cass reached out to me in the offseason and said, "What, you want to join us?" I said, "Yeah." So you can hop on with you and Lance. And again, it's been a ton of fun this season. Just a lot of fun.
We need a pretty face.
That ain't me. that's you. That's you and Lance. No. That ain't me. Again, you got college athlete, and you got guy who took stats and had a website at 11 years old. That's what I'm talking about. Which one of these is not like the other?
Everyone needs one of those. But no, this was
one of those.
You know me. But this was a whole lot of fun doing it from. I'll say from this side. I'll get back to not back, but I also have a day job that is on the other side of what we get to cover.
Right.
But no, this was fun. Just cover, man. You're right. I think the cool thing about our state, and I don't know that it's like this everywhere, but depending on where you're at in the state, and it usually it transcends levels, but just the different brands of football that's played. And you think your mind, at least mine does, immediately goes to like the different types of offenses that are run in the state. But in any given week, you could see, if you're a defensive coordinator, you've got to prepare for everything, because you're going to see it all. And that makes it, I think, really unique. And it's, speaking I'm pretty familiar with the state to our west with some family stuff, and you go watch them play football, and one, it's really good, but all the offenses for the most part, it's the same. We're in 11 personnel, we're in a gun, and kind of it's not all air raid, but we're spreading it out. Here, man, you might see 10 personnel for 4 quarters, and then the next week you're facing somebody who doesn't even have receivers on the field. So that I think that makes it unique, makes it exciting, and it's fun just to hear the stories, follow the stories, and being on this side and following it from this lens has been fulfilling. It's been a really good time, insightful. It's I've enjoyed it thoroughly, and Jason, we're glad that you can hop on here with us and educate us as well. But this was a whole lot of fun. But I can't wait till next year. I know we got some stuff down the pipe that we're working on, and we're going to continue to grow this thing and do it.
Hopefully,
Yeah,
we're not wrong. We're working on stuff.
Better.
We're not sitting idly.
No, we're going to win baseball games and get some stuff ready for talking ball. That's the plan.
But look, before we go though, I do want to give a shout out. I had a few people, Mitch Kraft reach out to me, and he said he was a listener.
My guy, Mitch.
Yeah. So look, he wanted to get a shout out. He said, there's an inaugural Acadiana Senior Bowl again December 20th at noon, and that's going to be broadcast on KVN TV. So this the same channel as LCA. I believe the game is going to be played at LCA. And of course, the people at Gridiron Football, their Gridiron Bowl, they're going to have a junior game, junior all-star game played at December 29th, and the seniors are going to play December 30th. And that's going to be played at Pineville on their YouTube channel. Again, so if you're supporting high school football, still some opportunities to do that with some of these senior games, junior games, and again, just another chance to support some of these guys who are trying to get their name out there and get a little bit of more attention.
There's one this weekend too at Southeastern, the LFCA North Shore All-Star Game. I believe it's at 2:00 in Hammond, America, at Strawberry Stadium. North Shore, it's like Tangipahoa, St. Tammany, and Chalmette, because they're in that district.
Hey, if anybody else has any, tag us. We'll repost it, retweet it. Again, we want to. That's what we're about, man. Make sure everybody gets their recognition. The kids deserve it. They bust their tail out there, and again, if we can give some type of coverage and attention their way, we'd be more than happy to do that.
No doubt. And look, we're not going to completely disappear for the next few months on here. We're still going to be active and do some things. Maybe pop a show just for the fun of it as teams start spring ball. But we do have some stuff that we're going to be fine-tuned and working on for next fall. We cannot wait. I know we're going to have a long off season to get better, to get ready. But I'm excited for next year and what's to come. I feel like we did a good enough job to create some good stuff and momentum moving forward. And can't wait to see what the future holds. Jason, this has been an absolute blast, dude.
Yeah.
Twice a week, Tuesdays and Sundays won't be the same. You are always welcome, though, to come across the lake and come catch a baseball game.
Maybe I get to call one. That'd be pretty great. If I got a chance to call one.
We'd love to have you. We'd love to have you. But I know Lance feels the same. He wasn't able to make it. He was bench pressing or squatting. He had his day job too. But again, this was a blast. We had a good time. Thank you all for following along with us. Don't forget, follow, like, share, and subscribe. For Lance, for Jason, I am Cass. Thanks for doing this 15-week journey with us. It was an absolute blast to have y'all along for the ride and follow high school football with y'all. We'll do it again next year, 2026.